Hello, this is our second part of the lecture on other islands outside of the Caribbean. In our first lecture we looked at the island of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. Our second second podcast will be on the island of New Guinea, which is a large island just to the north of Australia. Now, New Guinea is a continental island, and that's a true continental island because it was joined on to the continent of Australia in the last ice age, and as we'll see, it has been connected to the continental shelf of Australia. It has species mainly of vicariant origin. In other words, the species which are found on New Guinea are continental species which have been separated from a continent by sea level rises. But it also has some dispersal species, and those dispersal species are generally mainly those which have made it to New Guinea from Asia, from Southeast Asia. Okay, so New Guinea has never been attached to Asia, has only been attached to Australia, but it does have some Asian species, so those Asian species must be dispersal species. So New Guinea is fairly large, bigger than Madagascar. It's 760,000 square kilometres. It's on the northern part of the Australian continental shelf. So it's, as I said, has been repeatedly connected to Australia as sea levels rise and fall during the different ice ages, as water from the oceans has been sucked up into ice caps at the polar regions. So New Guinea tends to have an Australian biota which has been supplemented by dispersed Southeast Asian biota. And in fact, at some of the ecosystems in New Guinea, most notably the very temperate ecosystems at altitude, are quite similar or have elements or species which are similar to those found in similar Asian ecosystems. So it's living, there are high levels of endemism in these montane habitats in New Guinea. So there's the situation of New Guinea. So New Guinea is to the north of Australia, as this little circle shows. There's New Guinea. And the paler parts of the picture here indicate more shallow water. And so you can see that here is Australia down here, and here is New Guinea. The continental shelf extends around New Guinea. So New Guinea would have been attached to Australia when the sea levels were lower during the last ice ages. So New Guinea is a true continental island. So it does tend to have fairly high diversity, but low endemism. So there's New Guinea, a more detailed relief map. As you can see, there's a very strong and very high mountain range running right through or down the spine of New Guinea. And this mountain range is actually very high. In this part, the western part of New Guinea here, we have mountains which are well above 5,000 meters above sea level, and they actually are high enough to have glaciers, okay, which are permanent sheets of ice which are there throughout the year. There are many large areas of montane habitat which support many different unique species, and it's these montane habitats which tend to be more closely linked to Asia than the lowland habitats. The lowland habitats are much more closely linked to the Australian biota. I think one of the reasons for that is because there are more high altitude habitats like you find on these mountains in Asia than there is in Australia. In fact, Australia does not really have any very high altitude mountains. Its tallest mountain in Australia is about 2,000 meters above sea level, but it's only in Indonesia, in Borneo and Malaysia, you have mountains which get above 5,000 meters. So that is the closest area of montane habitat to New Guinea, so it's not unusual then that you are going to get species which are similar in New Guinea to Southeast Asia there. So New Guinea, as I said, a very strong mountainous centre, and this is the lowlands, more flat. This is actually a very typical scene for researchers going to research in lowland Papua New Guinea. You can see the camp back there. There's a tent pitched underneath a covering a rain tarp. I did some research in Papua New Guinea, and this is a very similar scene to what I experienced there. So the montane habitats, this is a montane habitat with some tree ferns and these grassland ecosystems which are above the tree line. It gets so cold at these altitudes, even though it's on the equator. New Guinea is a very tropical island, that trees cannot grow above a certain altitude. The seedlings are just killed off, so you only get these grasslands studded with these tree ferns. Another picture of some montane habitat showing evidence of very high humidities. You've got moss covering everything, so large numbers of epiphytes in New Guinea. If we contrast that with the lowland ecosystems, here we have the savanna ecosystems down in the southern part of New Guinea. These savanna ecosystems have species of plants and animals which are very, very similar to northern Australia. And this scene here could be out of northern Australia, as this one could be. This one probably not northern Australia, because there simply isn't enough rainfall in northern Australia to have these very large rivers systems. But it's also very flat. See, there's a very large termite mound here, which is very characteristic of the savannas in northern Australia, as well as in southern New Guinea. So New Guinea is known for its very diverse range of fauna as well as flora. New Guinea is the place where birds of paradise came from. So it was a bird of paradise species very similar to this one, Aragiana's bird of paradise, which William Ingham brought to Little Tobago Island, and why that island is sometimes called Bird of Paradise Island these days. Okay, so there are a large number of different species of these birds of paradise, and New Guinea is well renowned for those. So why do we have these many different forms of birds of paradise? Well, it is an island. It is isolated in that it's connected to Australia, which doesn't really have very much rainforest. So Australia is much more of a dry continent, so it doesn't have a lot of rainforest. So the rainforests in New Guinea are fairly isolated in that respect. It also shows this very great diversification, also shows the fact that New Guinea has been isolated for very long times, which allows many different species to evolve. So New Guinea also has some weird and wonderful animals as well, besides the birds. The tree kangaroos, this is a tree kangaroo, are kangaroos which have made the transition into arboreal animals, basically filling the niches which monkeys and apes would fill in Asia, Africa and the New World. This is a large anteater called a giant echidna. You get echidnas and also tree kangaroos in Australia, and you also get cassowaries, which is a large bird, much like an emu, but lives in rainforests, also getting in Australia. So all of these species, these unusual species, show the heritage of New Guinea with its Australian continental fauna. This species, however, is an Asian species. I think it's an emperor pigeon or a crown pigeon, and it only occurs in Southeast Asia. It doesn't actually occur in Australia. So this is likely to be a dispersal species which was added on to New Guinea after the after it got isolated from Australia and so on. So New Guinea is also known for its great diversity of human cultures and languages. New Guinea has probably more languages than any other country in the world. So much so, well, the reason for this is because the terrain, particularly in the Central Highlands, is so rugged that villages tend to be very much isolated from one another. So one village on one ridge with a large valley in between would hardly ever communicate with another village on the other ridge. So they basically evolved their own traditions, languages and culture, and they have very little in common with very close nearby villages. This sort of isolation has been reflected in evolution of many different species in New Guinea, in the animals and the plants as well. Threats to New Guinea. New Guinea is a relatively untouched rainforest island. It is being exploited these days though, mainly on the western side in Irian Jaya, or West Papua as it is called. The Indonesians control the western part of New Guinea, and they are busily trying to develop it. They do this by logging, converting large areas to farmland, and transferring large numbers of people from higher density population areas of Indonesia like Java and Bali and Sumatra into the relatively low populated areas of New Guinea. So that is leading to a large areas of habitat conversion and logging of existing rainforests. In the eastern part of New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, which is an independent nation, there is some degradation, but it's much less than in the Indonesian side of New Guinea. One of the reasons for that is that the central constitution of the country reflects local ownership. So people living in rainforests in Papua New Guinea actually own that rainforest, and there cannot be any logging or any sort of development in those places unless the local landowners agree and get some benefit from it. So that means that degradation and development in Papua New Guinea tends to be held back, as there are lots of negotiations to go through to actually work out who owns the land, and then to determine what appropriate compensation is for the people who actually own the land. Alright, so that's New Guinea, a large continental island, tropical continental island with large numbers of species. It's also isolated in the sense that the continent that it was joined onto, i.e. Australia, has very small areas of rainforest, so it is an island of rainforest in a desert continent. Okay, that's it.